Welcome back to our channel, History Buffs. Today, we're diving deep into the dark history of the Vikings. While Vikings are often portrayed as fierce warriors and adventurous explorers, they had a darker side that is often overlooked. From brutal executions to heinous acts of violence, the Vikings were not always the valiant heroes they are often made out to be. So, fasten your seatbelts as we uncover the lesser-known and darker aspects of Viking culture and civilization, raiding and plundering. Vikings were notorious for their raiding activities, where they would pillage and destroy villages, monasteries, and towns along their trade routes and coastal areas. Their raids were often brutal and ruthless, leaving a trail of destruction and terror. Slavery. Vikings engaged in the slave trade, both as captors and as slaves themselves. They would capture people from other lands during their raids and sell them as slaves, or they would become slaves themselves if captured during their own raids. This dark practice was prevalent in Viking society. Human sacrifice. Vikings practiced human sacrifice, particularly in their religious rituals. They would offer human victims to their gods, often in gruesome ways, as a way to gain favor or protection. This dark aspect of their religion sheds light on their beliefs and practices. Blood feuds. Vikings had a culture of blood feuds, which were long-standing and violent conflicts between families or clans. These feuds often resulted in revenge killings and vendettas that lasted for generations, perpetuating cycles of violence and brutality. Duels and personal combat. Vikings had a strong culture of dueling and personal combat, where disputes were often settled through violent means. This resulted in injuries, maiming, and even death, as they resolved conflicts through physical prowess and force. Berserkers. Vikings had legendary warriors known as berserkers, who were known for their ferocity and battle frenzy. They would enter a trance-like state fueled by alcohol or hallucinogenic substances, exhibiting violent and erratic behavior. This darker aspect of Viking warriors challenges the heroic image often associated with them. Infanticide. Vikings practiced infanticide, where unwanted or sickly infants were abandoned or killed. They believed in survival of the fittest and the need to maintain strong and healthy populations, resulting in the tragic loss of innocent lives. Harsh justice. Vikings had a harsh system of justice, with severe punishments for crimes, including mutilation, exile, and execution by methods such as hanging, beheading, or drowning. This reveals the brutal and unforgiving nature of Viking law and order. Human trafficking. Vikings engaged in human trafficking, with evidence of Viking slave markets and the sale of slaves in various parts of their territories. This dark practice further sheds light on their exploitation and mistreatment of fellow human beings. Polygamy. Vikings practiced polygamy, where wealthy men would have multiple wives. This often led to conflicts and rivalries among the wives and their children, resulting in complex family dynamics and tensions. Treatment of prisoners of war. Vikings had a brutal treatment of prisoners of war, often subjecting them to torture, enslavement, or death. This ruthless treatment of captives reflects the darker side of Viking warfare and conquest. Death in battle. Vikings had a belief that dying in battle was the only honorable way to reach Valhalla, the Hall of the Slain. This glorification of warfare and death in battle sheds light on their darker attitudes towards violence and war. Ritualistic executions. Vikings engaged in ritualistic executions, such as the Blood Eagle, where the ribs of a living victim were cut and spread apart to resemble eagle wings, causing immense pain and suffering until death. This gruesome and barbaric form of execution was reserved for those considered enemies or traitors, showcasing the brutality and cruelty of Viking culture. Gender inequality. While Viking women were known for their independence and strong roles in society, they still faced gender inequality. Women had limited rights and were often subjected to violence and abuse, including arranged marriages, forced labor, and even domestic violence. Pillaging of sacred sites. Vikings were known to pillage and desecrate sacred sites, including churches and monasteries, during their raids. This included looting precious religious relics, burning sacred texts, and killing monks and priests, showing a darker side of their religious tolerance and respect for other faiths. Torture and interrogation. Vikings were known to use torture and interrogation methods on captives and prisoners to extract information or confess. This included methods such as waterboarding, mutilation, and psychological torture, revealing the cruel and ruthless tactics used by Vikings for gaining intelligence or settling disputes. Child marriage. Vikings practiced child marriage, where young girls were often married off at a young age, sometimes as young as 12 years old, to older men. This practice subjected young girls to early marriages and forced sexual relationships, highlighting a dark aspect of Viking societal norms. Human skull trophies. Vikings were known to collect human skulls as trophies after battles or raids, displaying them as macabre decorations in their homes or on their ships. This practice of collecting human skulls as war trophies reflects the darker and more gruesome side of Viking warfare. Drug and alcohol abuse. Vikings were known for their heavy consumption of alcohol and the use of hallucinogenic substances, such as mushrooms and herbs, during their rituals and celebrations. This abuse of drugs and alcohol often led to reckless and violent behavior, contributing to their darker and more brutal reputation. Environmental exploitation. Vikings engaged in environmental exploitation, including deforestation and overfishing, as they expanded their territories and established new settlements. This unsustainable exploitation of natural resources had negative impacts on the environment and local ecosystems, revealing a darker side of their impact on the environment. While the Vikings are often romanticized in popular culture for their adventurous spirit and heroic tales, they had a darker side that included practices such as raiding, slavery, human sacrifice, blood feuds, dueling, and other brutal, and ruthless behaviors. Their culture was not without its flaws, and they engaged in practices that are considered morally wrong by today's standards. It's important to acknowledge and understand the complexities of history, including its darker aspects, to gain a more nuanced and accurate understanding of the Viking civilization. If you're finding this information intriguing, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights.
Thanks for watching.